Hello, this is Lev Nelik, and I'm recording this message specifically in light of the current events in the world to Adam Nelik, Liron Nelik, and Grant Nelik. This is my descendants. Adam is my son. Liron, and lives in Hoboken, New Jersey. Liron is the son of my cousin Jacob, my third cousin Jacob, who lives in Los Angeles. And Grant is son of Stephen, who lives in Michigan, and Grant lives in Washington, D.C. They're all Neliks, spelled slightly differently, N-L-I-K or N-L-I-C-K, or N-E-L-L-I-C-K, but whichever way, these Neliks are Neliks, descendants of Neliks. They're all Jews. And I'm copying also the rest of the family. I think you'll find it interesting. And it's very relevant today in light of what's going on in the world. The sources of light and sources of darkness are really separating and becoming and coming to conflict exposed, no longer just hush hush under the cover. What happens in America is very sad and frightening. And many Jews in America say sometimes, not jokingly, but actually frightfully, we don't know if it's 2024 in America or 1938 in Germany. In fact, German Jews will say, yeah, Hitler and his 300 gangsters in his party, just a brief event. Germany's elevated country is a country of Goethe, country of the poetry, country of science, country of technology. It will never happen in Germany. Guess what? In America, also we say, well, America is, no. It happened in Babylon, happened in Poland, happened in Spain, happened in Russia, but in America, it will never happen. Well, guess what? People are wondering, is it 1938? I hope it will be okay. We always hope and pray. But so far, it looks frightening, frankly to say. But we will, in this light, it's important to understand the nature of the conflict. And I'll briefly go through, very briefly, nature of the conflict. The hate of the Jews, anti-Semitism, it's not just because of the land. If it was because of the land, there's a lot of conflict between Japan and Russia in the Sakhalin Island, in Africa, millions of people get massacred. The world doesn't say very much about that. Well, when the 3 people mistakenly get killed, even mistakenly, in Gaza, the whole United Nations will have condemnation, and from a river to the sea, and death to the Jews, and F the Jews, and whatnot, comes in a pronounced multi-university uprising, so to speak, in America. Very pathetic to see. So it's not just about the land, and something deeper than that. And that depth comes in is, even among some emancipated Jews, if you will, as a minimum, or at the most, comes the indifference, and sometimes even condemnation of Israel, condemnation of our right to exist. There are nobody asking Japan right to exist, Americans right to exist, but Israel, for some reason, has to prove the right to exist. Well, some of this hatred comes from the anti-Semite because they just hate the Jews, the darkness, the evil. No matter what, you cannot negotiate, explain to evil to become good. They're just evil. Another group of the haters are simply just ignorant, they call them the useful idiots, that feel that the justice and big injustice being done, and Jews in Israel and the rest of the world are horrible people with their horns and tails, trying with their teeth to suck the blood from the innocent victims. Just like blood libels in the past, it comes back again. Amazing. You wouldn't think that in 2024 it will happen with all the technology we have, but it is happening. So, but nobody, I didn't see much about history in general to understand nicely, maybe politely, without being angry, not to point fingers. I don't want to point fingers on the Muslims, on the Jews, on the Christians, on the Hindus, on anybody. I just want to talk about the facts with the hope that ultimately that light will penetrate the darkness and illuminate it. 3,300 years ago, Yeshua ben Nun, a right-hand man, disciple of Moses, crossed over with almost roughly 3 million Jews into the land of Canaan, which became the land of Israel. Until that point, or before 40 years traveling in the desert, there were Hebrews. They were in Egypt after the exile, 70 people exiled from Canaan, When descendants of Abraham, Jacob, Isaac, and Jacob, they descended to Egypt. Story of Joseph. And in Egypt, they were in slavery for 210 years. And they left Egypt, and we're now in Pesach, which we're in the middle of the Pesach right now. We just had Pesach Seder, Passover Seder. And then the Passover Seder, I hope you talked about the history with the facts. We have to have emotions, but we also have to have facts. We have to have brains in addition to the heart. And the brain said the history, not only Torah, but Quran and the New Testament and the other religion sources and archaeology, museums, facts together, showing exactly that Torah is not just dreamed up. But if you want to go by the Torah, go by the Torah. If you go by Quran, Quran says the same thing. Go by the New Testament, Christians say the same thing. Archaeology museum say the same thing. Whichever way, as you religiously to the right, religiously to the left, or anywhere in the middle, there is a plenty of facts to show very simple things that we all can agree. All nations can agree. So 3,300 years, Joshua crosses over Jordan, and he lives, and the Jews became Jews on Sinai, and then 7 nations with which God told Jews that these nations will be displaced from Canaan, not because of the righteousness of the Jews, but because of the sinfulness of those 7 nations, the decadency of these nations. There was time for them to leave that place. So in the fight, in a conflict between invading Jews, so to speak, at that time, 3,300 years ago, against the local nations, children of Ham. Ham had, we'll talk about it in a second, but they're children of Canaan. Canaan is a son of Ham, so they're Hamites. Noah will come from Adam Harishon. Will come from Adam. Noah, the 10th generation from Adam, has 3 sons: Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Europeans basically come from Japheth. From Shem come Semites, like Jews and Arabs, were Semites. And from Ham comes Hamites, mostly it's an African area, children of Ham. So what happened in that area? In that area, 7 nations live. And if we look at the little simplified map, let me share the screen. Okay, now the screen is shared, and maybe now I can go to the chart. Okay, well, this is an interesting map you like to see. Here's a Palestine at that time, call it Canaanites. Canaan became Israel, and this is where it is. This is Gaza is on the south to west corner of the Palestine. Today, Arabs want to call it Palestine, but at that time it was Canaan. So it's a southwestern portion of Canaan, Gaza. The rest of Israel was settled with the 7 nations, descendants of Ham, descendants of Canaan. A little bit across in the Mediterranean Sea, after Cyprus, the next island is Kaftor, or Crete today. Crete belongs to Greece. And then a little below here is Egypt, and it is just this little bit of handwritten notes of the children of Ham. Ham had 4 kids: Cush, Mitzrayim, Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Let's talk about specifically Mitzrayim and Canaan. Mitzrayim had 6 kids, and Canaan had 11. Of the 11, not all of them went to the land of Canaan. The 7, Canaan himself and Zidonites, which is Perizzites, I should say, Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, and Hivites, they came to Canaan, of which Hittites came to the Gaza area, and that portion of Hittites, not all of them, some of them stayed, but the ones that came to Gaza area were Avim. They were Avim, Rephaim, and Horim. You can read all that in the history books or in the Bible, in the Torah. So Avim are living in Gaza many, many years ago. But 2 of the kids of Mitzrayim, a brother of Canaan, 2 of the kids, which is over here, Pasrusim and Kasluvim, they came to island of Kaftor, which is across the sea. You can get in the boat and get there, not that difficult. They lived there, and they didn't live a very nice. They're swapping wives, and they were very decadent type of living. Eventually, they went over to Gaza and they fought their cousins. Again, they're children of Mitzrayim, and Avim, children of Canaan, so they're cousins. They fight their cousins, displace his cousin, and live in the land of Gaza. From that standpoint on, they're referred to as Hivites, one of the 7 nations, the Jews were commanded by God to displace. So the movement of the from Kaftor, of these 2 nations, children of Mitzrayim, was in Hebrew, it's called lifalosh, liflosh. This is spelled in English and in Hebrew, lamed pei, lamed vav, liflosh. Liflosh means to invade, but invade violently, not just invade to come and settle, but violent invasion. That's called liflosh, and the name Philistine. The name Philistines come from this. So Philistines are now living here, and they are not Semites. They're not related to the Jews ethnically. They're not related to the Arabs. They're children of Ham, one of the sons of Noah, one of the 3 sons of Noah. So that's the story. That's how these Avim living here. So jumping through the history a little bit further, what happens next? Well, just jump all. There were the Jewish kings, Saul, David, King Solomon, and on and on and on. And then eventually there was exile. Jews were exiled to Babylon, relatively short time, for 70 years. Then they came back and rebuilt the destroyed temple, became Second Temple. Then Greeks invaded, Romans invaded. And when Romans destroyed the temple and Jews went to exile roughly 2,000 years ago, Romans occupied the area, the Israel area. That time, the area, the Israel was called in 2 kingdoms. It was area, the kingdom of Israel and kingdom of Yehuda. Yehuda was in the south, Beersheba and all that area, and northern portion towards Galilee, Jerusalem, there was Israel. Between Israel and Judah also was some friction, but that's just like a little bit of a misunderstanding between kids, so to speak, between tribes. Unfortunately, that misunderstanding, and that did contribute to exile, and Jews paid the price for that. No question about it. They paid the price. They went to exile. Into exile, they went to Spain, they went to Morocco, they went to Northern Africa, and then they migrated. They were kicked out from Spain in 1492. They went to Poland. They kicked out from there, massacred there. We all know about Holocaust in Germany. It happened all over in Germany. German Jews were saying when Hitler first, in early 30s, it's a passing event. He is nuts. It will pass. In 1933, they didn't know there will be 1938. Or 2024, today, what happens in America kind of unfortunately resembles, frighteningly, what happened in Germany. We hope and pray it will settle and not resurface continuously its head, but it doesn't look too good and kind of frightening today. We Jews have a tendency to deny the reality. We always hope for the best in humanity. We always hope if you talk and extend your heart to somebody, he or she will understand and sit down and talk and compromise and find solution by peaceful means. But evil doesn't like to compromise. If you talk to evil, evil says, well, I'm done talking. Get out of here. That's evil. And today we do witness the separation of light and evil. And that's why I'm sending this message to Adam, to Leron, and to Grant, to remember that, to know the facts, and tell to your children that it doesn't go disappear. So it doesn't disappear. So it doesn't go in vain, that our lives and lives of your grandparents and great-grandparents are not lost, that they were killed and burned in the burners of the Buchenwald and Auschwitz, not for nothing. So you can remember and not deny, not to walk away to the football game or skiing or baseball or golf or something, to thinking that's not for me. I don't belong to that. Hitler didn't differentiate if your father is Jewish or mother is Jewish, or even none of them are Jews, on your grandparents. Hitler got them no matter how much they said they will assimilate. Well, so much for that. Now continue with history. So in approximately 2,000 years ago, Christianity started. So Christians, original Christians were Jews, converts to Christianity. They followed one of the Jewish religious figures, Judas. And then we know about Christianity. Christianity also went through a violent period. I mean, Inquisition, Crusaders. It was not a very nice time. They weren't very nice people, the Crusaders. But over time, they went through a period of reformations and stabilization. And today, Christians are no longer crusaders or Inquisition type of Spain people as they used to be before. Christians people and Jewish people are getting along by and large, and we refer to that as Judeo-Christian tradition. The Jews and Christians have common denominator. Now, Jews have religious and ethnic identity. Christians have religious, not necessarily ethnic. You can be a Polish Jew, you can be a Swedish Christian, Swedish Jews, you can be Christians in Singapore, in Africa, and that unites you by faith. In 7 centuries, and in that point, the remains Semites, the Arabs, not Jews. Jews is one of the Arab tribes. But the rest of them in Saudi Arabia were just a loosely fit clans of the kind of Bedouins roaming the desert. That's how the Arabs lived for many, many centuries. Eventually came Muhammad, and in the 7th centuries, Common Era, about 1300 years ago, the armies of Muhammad swept from Northern Africa and on to Spain, and eventually that became the birth beginning of Islam. They came also to Israel. And at that time, Jews were already for 7th century expelled. Not all. The Jews remained in that area of Israel ever. They never left it. Most were exiled, but some, a small percentage, small group, always remained. The land of Israel never was void from a Jewish presence for 3,300 years. Sometimes a lot, sometimes very few, but they were always there. The Muslims came 7th century, which is not 3,300 years ago, but 1,400 years ago. Well, it's not as long as 3,300 years, but granted, it's still a long time. Muslims took over. The Christians and Jews were no longer in control of the land. So Christians took the land from the Jews. And by the way, when they did, the Romans, to stick it to Jews for resistance, say, this is not a land of Israel. We're going to call it a land of Philistines. Original settlers, they were Philistines, Avim, Philistines, Palestinians. And then the word Palestinians come on these Philistines, Hamites, not descendants of Arabs or Jews, but from Ham. That's the land of Philistines, Palestinians. That's what Palestine came about 2,000 years ago, when the Romans, to really stick it to the Jews, not only physically humiliate them, but even mentally abuse them, they started to call it late Palestine and Philistines. Okay. Arabs came, Muhammad came, Muslims came, they took over. No longer Jews lived there a little bit, Christian lives a little bit, but the Muslim control over the land. Okay, Muslims also started to go through a period of reformation. Muslims brought to the world also many inventions in astronomy, inventions in poetry, inventions in very nice cooking, hospitality. Muslims are descendants of Abraham, just like we're Jews. Hospitality, pleasantness, it's falafel, great cooking, wonderful music. Culture is very similar to Jewish culture. And also the Torah says in the Bible, Ismail, from whom Arabs come, and Isaac reconciled when their father Abraham died. They reconciled. So that the Quran and Torah tells us, Jews and Muslims, knock it off, get together, reconcile. We see some of that in action. Abraham's Accord, Saudi Arabia, United Emirates, Morocco, Sudan, other area. Sudan is not Arabs, it's mostly Hamites, but they also converts to Islam. The world is coming together slowly, but these hiccups and hatred still prevails. There is a resistance. So that moderations, the Jews and Christians basically are willing to discuss the point, listen to opposite view, and say, well, I differ with you, I don't agree with you, but let's go have coffee together. I still love you, you're my brother, vice versa. Among Muslims, there's also very nice, good, decent people, but there's some that still where the Christians were in the times of Inquisitions. or Jews were even before Abraham as Arab tribes. It was, come on, my land, this is my land, this is your land, I'm going to fight you. So the history, God doesn't have a time span. God is infinite. For God God looking on all of us, humanity, and say, you're acting as kids, you're acting like children, get along. But we don't see it. We sometimes don't see that. So anyway, that's a little bit of the history. So yes, you can say that even though Muslims, Arabs came to Palestine 1,300 years ago, but it's still a valid point. It's still a lot of years. Their descendants, children, great-children, great-great-children, and on, lived in this area, and Jews and Arabs lived in this area, and many times peacefully, sometimes not. But the fact that both were present in this land. For us, Jews, to claim this is our land and all Arabs have to get out, it's unfair. Even if this original was our land. But our cousins came there 1,300 years later when we were not in control of the land. Christians were. Well, get along now. Don't count 3,300 years, more than 1,300 years. Who cares? It's only, if Muslims came there only like 5 years ago, it would be a different story. But 1,300 years, it's just as long as 3,300 years. We should put it behind us and use it as a strength, not a division. Okay, let's move forward. So in the end of 19th centuries, 1820, 1830, 1840, a lot of difficulties are coming towards the Jews in Russia and Poland. Pogroms. Many Jews started to immigrate to Israel. And the land of Israel, Palestine, that was called because of the name I just explained, that land started to have more and more Jews. They initially were smaller in numbers than the Arabs at that time. First, it was all Jews. It was the Joshua days. Then Christians, also Jewish converts to Christianity. Then, as Arabs started to come there after the Muhammad, Arabs did become a majority. So it's somebody takes your land, and then the land gets taken away from them, and they come there. Many, many years later, their descendants say, I'm sorry what happened in the history, but I'm now here. Let's figure out, let's negotiate, let's work something today. And to work something out, listen, it's a small piece of land, but it's still big enough for us to get along. You take this, like Abraham told Lot, if you want to go to the east, I go to the west. If you want to the west, I go to the east. Let's get along. So in 1899, I think, Herzl, who was not religious at all, but once he saw Dreyfus affair in France, such injustice committed to the Jews in France, he decided to make this land more centralized, not just unofficial living by the Jews, but official Jewish land. And that's where Zionism started, return to Zion. So we stop being persecuted. And the year of the histories will conclude with the creation of the Jewish state. That was Herzl's dream. Baron Rothschild, French, Jew, he subsidizes a lot of settlements. And many Polish and Russian Jews that started, some of them religious, some not. Some were religious Zionists, some were secular Zionists, some were religious against Zionists. There was a mixture, all sorts of Jewish denominations in terms of political and religious beliefs. They all came to Israel, more and more and more and more and more. As the number started to increase, Arabs started to, until that point, Arabs and Jews pretty much got along in Palestine. But now there was a friction. Jews are coming to take the land. Well, is it really your land? Well, it's yours and mine. My great-great-great-great-grandfather, Abraham, is the same as your great-great-great-great-grandfather, Abraham. So we all have lived here peacefully. But the history is sometimes is not known. So what happened at that point, Jews owned the land. Arabs actually in the Palestine, traditionally, it was a very interesting situation. It was very common for the Arabs living in Syria or in Lebanon or in other Eastern Arab countries to own plots of land. So the guy might live in Damascus, and he owns a plot in, say, Haifa or in Judea, Samaria, in Hebron. He owns the land. And on this land, people just roaming the land, Bedouin tribes, clans, living, basically, they have the animals, they have their fields, and they live. Here's a clan of Bedouin Arabs, and here's a clan of Jews, and they kind of live together, but the land is owned formally by the absentee landlord. At that time, from the 16th century, that land was also officially was Ottoman Empire, Turkey. Turkey had it. Everything was under Turkish crown. The official language was Turkish language, English language, Arabic, and Hebrew. Actually, I'm not sure about Turkish language. I think it was a Hebrew, Arabic, and English. Those three languages. Why English? Because after 1914 war in Europe, Britain, as one of the winning powers against Germany, took over one of the many lands they had was Palestine, and Britain established a British mandate over the Palestine. Therefore, English became another language in addition to the Hebrew and Arabic in this land. So Jews that came to this on a bigger mass in the 19th century, 1820, 1830, 1860, 1890, 1910, 1920, and on and on and on, already created a society, civil society with schools, with hospitals, with theaters, living way before 1948 and say 1880. Oh, they have a music shows, they have a field, they have a kibbutzim. That was way like 50, almost 100 years before 1948. But the 1947 United Nations said, listen, because there's a friction, let's make sure this land doesn't have any more conflict. We're going to separate the land. We're going to give some of this to Arabs and some of the Jews, and let's figure it out. And they presented several plans of the partition of Palestine. And the plans were changing. But in 1948, Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, said, okay, 1948, now we live over here. We live in Tel Aviv. We live in Beersheba. That's our land. He created this, and Arabs can take whatever other things they would like to offer. Let's sit down, talk with them. So let's just talk to them about, okay, we have a right to this land. You have the right to land. Let's talk it out. Jerusalem's holy city. Okay, you have your mosque. We don't have a temple. Hopefully we'll have a temple. Let's get it next to each other. You go to your mosque, we'll go to our temple, and everybody will be fine. I can even visit your mosque. Jews are allowed to visit mosque. Muslims are allowed to visit the temple. Let's visit each other, have coffee after services. That was a hope. 4 or 5 Arab countries, Jordan, Iraq, Egypt, Syria, and Lebanon, attacked Israel, 1948. And after the war, during the war, many Arabs that lived in this area got frightened and instigated by the 5 invading armies to say, leave. And many of them left. That created refugee problem. Yes, there were some abuses on the Jewish side, and there were some abuses on the Arab side instigating. But overall, the movement created these refugee camps in Lebanon, in Jordan. Jordan now, 70% of Jordan is Palestinians. The monarchy is Cushite, Hashemite kingdom are related to Saudi Arabians clan, not really Palestinians ethnically. So that created 1948 problem. So from 1948 problem, there are several maps. I'm not going to present the maps to you, but basically history is such that you can find them on the internet everywhere. Jews said to Arabs, okay, how about this map? No like it. Don't like this map. Do you like it? Then going to the peace accord, Oslo and Camp David and on and on and on. But ultimately, Arabs basically said, no, we want the whole thing. We want the whole thing. We don't want them to be here. Well, Jews said, that's not fair. We don't want you to leave. We want you to live here. And we'll have a 2-state, Jewish state and the Palestinian state. In Jewish state, Arabs can live, but it's Jewish state. In the Palestinian state, it's your state. Go by whatever Quran tells you to do if you want to. But Jews can also live here. And if you don't want Jews to live here, fine. We're going to leave from that area. But basically, Jews were open to 2 states. Each of them, one is under the crown of Judaism, another on the crown of the Muslim or Quran, if you want, religiously. But within each state, you can have minority people living in peace to each other. Jews will be happy this way. They have the state. Palestinians will be happy they have the state. Jews accepted that. Palestinians did not. And that non-acceptance goes on and on and on and on and on. And that history, most people, even among Jews, don't know. Well, I show now that for you, Adam, Liron, and Grant, some documents that shows you quite interesting that it's not in 1948 we came. Here is a picture. Here's a couple of pictures in near Galilee. This is a land that is owned by, it is. That's from the document, Israel Nelik. That's a grandfather of Jacob Nelik. He lives in Los Angeles. Yosef Nelik had his cousin from Tel Aviv. They bought the land, and here's the land. Here's a picture of the land. Liron went there maybe 10, 15 years ago, I guess, Liron, and he took these pictures. Here's the land. Now, this is a plot that's near, it's a called land of, it's Perea. It's not too far from Sea of Galilee, in that area somewhere. So if I go and close this, and then here's the documents, interesting documents. Take a look at this. This is documents. It's in Hebrew, and it shows the British crown, and it shows the name on the bottom, and it is 1935, before 1948, 13 years before 1948. It shows on the bottom that this land was purchased by Israel, see, huge Israel Nelik. That's a deed for the land he purchased near Galilee in Israel. Here's another one. That was purchased in 1935. This was in 1944. And this one actually in English, it says Palestine government. And there's abbreviation here, okay, Nesafat. And it was bought by Israel Nelik. And it shows, anyway, the plot, 47, what is this, meters, square meters. I'm not sure what it means here. And maybe it's dunams, the registration number, plot number, registration number to Israel Nelik, the signature. And he bought it from, in the village of Dalia. That's what just showed the map. And it was bought from, I can't see for, it was bought from a local, from Jabal Ephraim. So Jabal Ephraim, I guess an Arab, owned this land, and he sold it in 1935, before 1948. Jews sold the land to the Arabs, Arabs sold the land to the Jews, they traded on back and forth. So when the Jews came in from Europe, many of them, some from America, some from Northern Africa, some from Iraq, they bought the land. Yesterday, we visited very interesting place, history. That's a museum. Oops, not wrong picture. Let's see. Here it is. Still not the correct one. Meskeret Batya. It's near Rehovot, not too far from Tel Aviv. Look at these pictures. That's a picture, 1913. So it's Jewish settlements in that Meskeret Batya. And another picture here. Let me get my picture out of the way. Here's a picture. That's how life was. Horse and buggy, 1913. Another picture, 1947, before 1948, the graduating class of kids, children. This is another event, 1913. This is another event, 1930. And Rabbi Moliver, he lived in Poland, Russia, I'm sorry. He worked in 1883 with Baron Rothschild to establish this community. So in 1883, this community established, and here's the guys, that's Rabbi's picture. And the picture I'm showing you are dated in early 1900s, not after 1948. to say that there was no Jews there before 1948, this goes against the documented facts. Okay, so let me do now. This is my cousin and me. Okay, let's do stop share. Okay, we're back to this. So that completes 3,300 years of history. And I want you, Adam, Liron, Grant, not to forget that. I want you to look into this. we have a book. I have a book, 400 pages I wrote. And in this book, there are a lot of pictures. There are charts. Adam, there's a picture of your great grandfather. And the charts look like this. All this history, I'm talking about every detail in these books. Also a little bit of history of my wife, Helene. And this is also a little map where Leron's, Grant's, and my ancestors all come from, within 20 kilometers, 15 miles area in near Kremenets, Vizhgorod, Mezrovich, Okop, and other areas. So this is a book that I have, that I put all these details including these documents, that goes for approximately 11 generations. All right, so I hope you enjoyed. It might be a little bit lengthy, but I think the time will come when your son and daughter, Adam, and when your kids later on, and Grant, your descendants, will be writing the school project. And at one point, usually they do it maybe in 5th grade, 6th grade, they'll come to you and say, we have a project in school to tell about ancestors. Tell me about my grandfather Lev. Tell me about my grandfather Jacob. Tell me about my grandfather Stephen. Tell me about my grandmother Philip, my aunt Hope. Tell me about them. What are you going to tell them? Tell them to watch this video. And I hope before they're old enough to watch this video, you'll tell them the story. So our lives and our lives of my ancestors and your ancestors was not in vain. That the door by door, the generations will continue. Again, today is 26th of April, 2024, which is 5,784 years from creations, which is almost 3,300 years from the state of Israel, counting from Joshua came to Israel 3,296 years ago. That is not 75 years anniversary. It's a 3,300 almost years anniversary, and we have to be proud of that. And we have believed that the current problems in the world will work out, that the violence and hatred that comes from the dark side will come to the fruitions, and people will be able to sit and talk. But in order for that to happen, we first also have to show strength and belief in our history, strength and respect for other nations, for other people, but also strength and respect for ourselves. And with that, I want to wish you, today's Friday. It's Friday at about 10 o'clock in the morning. My wife is cooking for Shabbat. I'm going to sit with a friend to have a cup of coffee and a piece of matzah. I suggest you have a bit of two. So Pesach Sameach, Happy Pesach, Shabbat Shalom. Love you. And let's stay in touch. And let you, 3 of you and more, call each other. By the way, you are in similar businesses. Adam, Veron, Grant, you are similar businesses. Maybe you create a common company, private company, Nelix Incorporated, real estate developers. One of the real estate might be Israeli real estate in Galilee. Who should investigate it? Jacob, talk to Leron. See if you come to visit Israel next time. You and I met a couple of months ago near Tel Aviv. Let's think next time we meet near Galilee and go see this land. Go to see these pictures. Let's see the stakes that your grandfather put it in. My grandfather's first cousin. Let's say that area is still available and we can live there. Live here, enjoy it. Shabbat Shalom, and Israel Chai. Israel Chai. Israel lives. Amen.